Hey guys, I'm back. So today I thought I'd do my very own video on my Book of Shadows. As I said in my Ritual Tools videos, I do have a Book of Shadows and a Book of Mirrors. You can see obviously the difference there. One's rather expensive and pretty, and the other's just a notebook. It doesn't mean I value one any more over the other. It means that one is more of a ritual tool and one is an everyday journal. And I want to be more comfortable with the one I'm writing in every day, whereas it's a special experience to write in the Book of Shadows. That's how I personally see it. There are even people who have both books, that view it as equally ritualistic to write in either. And it is, to a certain extent, but I guess, I don't know, it's intimidating sometimes to write in my Book of Shadows because my handwriting's so atrocious that it takes me hours to transfer my ritual. It takes so long for me to do that because I'm so worried about being able to read it later and having it be pretty and perfect that I don't want to have to do that every day when I'm writing in my Book of Mirrors. It's a notebook. I can scratch out as I need. I can tear out pages and not feel guilty and whatever. It's not as organized as my Book of Mirrors because I write in it every day and there's so much I'm trying to say, but I prefer it that way because I can keep track of my progress consecutively, whereas in the Book of Shadows it's more if I'm looking for something specifically related to ritual. So that's kind of the difference between the two. The Book of Shadows just contains my rituals and my spells that I've done. My Book of Mirrors will contain some portions of the rituals or the spells in their entirety. Like, I'll work through writing the spell in here. It'll contain my meditations, my dreams, any exercises I find in books that I do, I'll write about in here. I'll write about my plans and my goals in here. Anything that's not a ritual or a spell and specifically related to the craft. I've seen a lot of people talk about putting all sorts of things in their Book of Shadows, and there's no right or wrong way to do the Book of Shadows. It is your own book, and it's very personal that way, and you choose what goes in it and what doesn't, and who gets to read it and touch it and blah blah blah. It just kind of confused me because, I guess because of the way I've always seen the Book of Shadows. Even if I were to combine these two books, I'd still feel like half of the stuff that they feel the need to put in them doesn't belong in there. Like, yes, in my Book of Shadows, I put my own personal view of what Wicca is and what it means to me and my own spiritual beliefs, and it went into that in detail. But to put all this information in your Book of Shadows doesn't really make sense to me personally, I guess, because I have a shelf full of books out there that I can go look at if I need to review. I guess if you don't have the luxury of owning the books, then maybe you do that. I do have notes on mythology in my Book of Mirrors. I have notes on some of the books that I did borrow from people, but that's about it as far as like actual documenting knowledge that I've received from those sources. There were also people who'd put long lists of correspondences that weren't even their own personal correspondence lists. I guess, again, because I have books out there with lists of correspondences, I don't feel the need to put them in my Book of Shadows. I did make my own lengthy list of correspondences for colors and the stones and herbs that I work with and own. So there was that correspondence, but that was also for an exercise that I was doing for one of my books that I was working through. So I did put it in my Book of Mirrors. Looking back, and I think I am going to transfer it, I think it would be prudent if you're making your own list of correspondences, instead of putting it in your Book of Shadows or your Book of Mirrors, to put it on the computer. And I think I'm going to do this because I think it's going to be so much easier. Because my list of correspondences is so limited, it's going to obviously grow over time, and it's going to be hard for me to go back into my Book of Mirrors and change it. So that needs to not be the only record I have of it. And if it's on the computer, I can easily go in and edit it and save it and be done. And I might add some other things that are going to be edited frequently on that and have my own, like, disc of mirrors. I don't really know what I'm going to call that one. But it's going to be an addendum to my Book of Mirrors, probably. The only reason, really, that I don't see a reason besides having the books that I can refer to put those things in my Book of Mirrors and my Book of Shadows is because there's already so much that goes into both of these books, especially the Book of Mirrors. But the Book of Shadows, my rituals at least last 45 minutes to an hour. So that's a lot to write in here. And though I do use a similar format every time and I just write the new parts in there, it's still a lot. And this book's going to fill up really fast. And though I can buy another little black book to slip into this leather sleeve, I don't want to have 15 books of shadows from one year. So that's kind of the reason I don't do all of that, because it's so hard to get to what I want anyway in either of these books, that adding all sorts of information that I can get out there or from other sources online or whatever is just too crowded. I feel like there's too much that I'm trying to fit in this book. If I were to do that, I'd probably also put it on the computer, or maybe have a different book that I'd put notes in that I could fill up that way. It just gets too confusing for me, and I'm not horribly organized, but this is something I feel the need to be organized about because I look back at it so often, and if I don't strive my hardest to be organized, I'm never going to find anything that I want ever again. And that's obviously the reason we keep track of what we're doing, so that we can look back at it, see how we've grown, see how we've progressed, look at the things we've done and assess if they've worked or if they haven't, and move on or use them again. I also thought I'd discuss the format for my Book of Shadows, because my Book of Mirrors obviously doesn't really have a format, but the Book of Mirrors has a very strict format, in mine at least, which also keeps me organized. I don't remember where I found this. I know I found it in a book, but I haven't been able to find it in any of the books that I own, so I'm assuming it was one that I checked out of the library or borrowed from a friend. So I'm glad that I wrote this down, even though I have no clue where it came from. So forgive me for not citing my source. I'll just put magical record at the top, and then I will list the type of the ritual. For this first one, it's my dedication ritual. I'll put the date and time, which is important. The type of ritual is obviously important if you're looking for a specific ritual when you're going back. The date and time is important if you're looking at how well your correspondences worked out for you. If you did it at a certain time of day, if you did it at sunset, or if you did it at sunrise or midday, it has an impact on your ritual, because those are all ruled by different astral bodies. And also, if you remember when you did it, that's kind of obvious that you'll look for that. The approximate length, the phase of the moon, which is again important for correspondence purposes, the location, which is, I don't know if that one's horribly important. It might be important to you looking back at it where you did it, to have that sense memory of the ritual. It might be important because if this ritual had deep impact on you, you might want to go back, especially if it's like a dedication ritual. You might want to go back and do a rededication ritual in that same area, or something like that. The purpose, which is fairly obvious. The deities invoked. The ritual tools used, which is only important because you can remember the energies that were imbued in those tools in this ritual. You can look back and see what tools still need to be purified, perhaps. The chants or music used, which I found horribly important because I use music in all of my rituals. I sing at least like 5 or 6 songs because music is so important to me for raising energy and for connecting with the divine. It's a big part of all of my rituals. So that if I use a new song in my ritual or a new chant, and I can't remember what ritual I used it in, having that at the beginning is horribly important for me. Well, then you'll write your ritual and you'll like have a header for each section, like purification, deity invocation, dedication, or ritual body. Music, if you have a music section. If not, you just put the music in there where it went. If you use any actual literary things, if you use poetry, or if you recite the Wiccan Rede or the Charge of the Goddess, you'd put that in there. Communion, then, releasing quarters, opening circle, and grounding. Then after that, you will usually leave a page or so blank to go back, especially if you're doing a spell, to go back and discuss the effects of the spell, or you could do that in your Book of Mirrors if you wanted, but you'll want to have a place where you can document where the effects of the spell are written so that you can refer back to that. So that's basically how I organize my Book of Shadows. There are obviously a lot of different ways to do that. So that's my video on Book of Shadows. Bye.